I will now like to go over exercise 19-13, and the first thing they ask for is determine 2021 earnings per share. They tell us in the problem that their actual net income for 2021 was $400,000, and the beginning shares January 1st, 2021 was $202,000. Shares. In February, they purchased 6,000 shares of their treasury stock. That was purchased at the end of February. Treasury stock is shares issued but not outstanding. So that would be a reduction in the shares outstanding. So if you take 6 times 10 divided by 12, 10 months left is a negative 5,000 shares are no longer outstanding. And then on October 31st, they sold the 6,000 shares. So you would add 6,000, and that would happen at the end of October. So there'd be 2 months till the end of December divided by 12. So you would have 1,000 weighted shares outstanding. And at the end of November, they sold an additional 24,000 new shares, times that by 1 month, divided by 12. So that's 2,000. You would take 400,000 divided by the weighted shares outstanding you would take 400,000 net income divided by the weighted shares outstanding of 200,000, which gives you $2 for your earnings per share. They then ask for the calculation to be made for 2022. And in 2022, we find January 15th, they declared and issued a 2-for-1 stock split, and the net income was $400,000. So, net income is $400,000. Now notice, this is not the weighted shares outstanding. At the beginning of the year, they want the actual shares outstanding. So, if you look up at 2021, there was 202,000 shares outstanding. They purchased their own treasury stock for 6,000, and then they sold it for 6,000. So that is a wash. So 202,000 plus 24,000, the actual shares outstanding is 226,000. And then the only transaction that happened that year was on January 5th for a 2-for-1 stock split. And from the previous problem we did, exercise 1912, we know that if it's a stock split or a stock dividend, the rules are to go to the beginning of the year and assume the stock split or a stock dividend occurred at the beginning of the year. So in this case, you would take 226,000 shares times 2 because it was a 2-for-1 stock split. So your denominator is 452,000. And if you take the 400,000 and divide it by 452,000, your earnings per share is 88 cents. Now, you can see that there is a big difference between the earnings per share in 2021 and the earnings per share in 2022. So noting that, we then find out in requirement 3, they ask us at what amount will the 2021 earnings per share be presented in the 2022 comparative financial statements. Right now, 2021 is not comparative to 2022 because there is no change in the stock for the stock split to be incorporated into 2021. Just like a stock split or stock dividend issued, it is assumed it goes back to the beginning of the year and would recalculate all activity, stock activity, until the stock split or stock dividend occurred. This is also held true in comparative statements. Here we have 2021 and 2022 information, the income statement information, as well as the shares information. To make a comparative, we would have to recalculate 2021 as if the stock split occurred in January 21st, 2021, to be comparative to the transaction in the earnings per share for 2022, because we are actually calculating the earnings per share. So we're going to go over that. And what we'll see here is, excuse me a minute. You would take 202, because you go back to 2021, because we want it to be comparative, and therefore you would better understand the earnings per share. And we treat that the stock split in 2022 really has to be recorded in 2021 for comparative purposes. So you would go 202,000 shares times 2 gives you 404,000 shares, minus 10, which is a -5 minus 10, plus 2, 1 times 2 for the stock split, and 2 times 2 for the purchase of new shares for $400,000. So if you go down, you would see, 400,000 shares, and you would take the 400,000 net income, and we know that the shares outstanding is 400,000 shares. So your earnings per share is now can be compared to your 2022 earnings per share, because you've included the 2-for-1 stock split. Or to make it easier, it's 200 shares times 2. I just wanted to show you the weighted shares as well, because I wanted you to see it still comes to 400,000 shares.